I've turned my vase upside down, and now what I'm going to be doing is covering the entire thing with cling film. Just make sure to cover the entire vase that you're using. You don't want any of the vase exposed, as the florist mesh or whatever you're using to cover the vase may stick to it. So I'm just going to be cutting off a piece now, making sure that it's well covered on all sides. I struggled to get the top of the cling film to attach to the top of my vase. So what I did was I used a bit of the glue water in the bucket, just added to the inside of the vase, and the cling film stuck to that perfectly. In the black bucket, I have taken my florist mesh and I've cut three pieces that I measured out against my vase. So I turned my vase upside down. I measured out a piece against to make sure that I had enough with a bit of an overflow. And then I cut an extra two pieces, so three in total, which I will be using to drape over my vase. In that bucket, I've got just almost a cup of water and the about 2 cups of glue. So I really wanted there to be way more glue than water, as I wanted this fabric to really hold up well. Before I added my or draped my fabric, I actually added another dollop of wood glue. So in all, I probably added about 2.5 cups of wood glue to 1 cup of water. This entire process is very messy and your hands get very tacky. So if you want to avoid that, go ahead and wear some gloves. Before I drape any fabric, I'm going to wring it out first just to remove any excess gluey water, as I don't want it to be too saturated. I'm also working on my glass cutting board, so be aware of whatever surface you are using to drape your florist mesh or whatever it is that you're using, as you don't want it to stick. You want to be able to remove it quite easily once it's dried. So this mesh has a very stretchy side, and so what I'm doing now is I'm just draping it nicely over the vase, and I'm just straightening out the edges, not too worried about how uneven they are at the moment. I'm just making sure that it's on nice and more or less even over the vase. And then I'll be going ahead and adding the second and third layers the same way. This part doesn't have to be perfect, as we're going for quite an organic look to our vessel. You can really take some poetic license here with it and just drape it however you feel. I'm just making sure that the layers are well attached to each other. So I'm just sort of overlapping now with my second piece. I'm smoothing it down from the base to the down the trunk of my vase, and I just want a nice fluted edge to my vessel, so that's why I'm just smoothing it out to that point. I'm now going in with my third and final layer, and again I'm just going to straighten out as much as I can and just smooth it all down against my vase. And then if you've got rubber bands, you can use that. I didn't have any rubber bands on hand, so what I used was string. and I tied a piece of string just loosely around the base of my vase. I then rolled that piece of string down so that it would just take the fabric underneath down and just really smooth it. I then added a second piece of string further down, closer to the neck of the vase, so that it would help really emphasize that fluted edge. I'm now just going to take a moment and just pull out the edge of that fabric. I don't want it too bunched up and any of the fabric folded underneath itself. So I'm just sort of taking it out and just, I will be cutting the edge of that a little bit later, as I want a more rounded edge to my vessel. I don't want it to be so angular because the pieces I cut were rectangle. So I'm just going to take my scissors now and just cut around so it gives a really nice rounded edging to my vessel. Also, once your fabric has dried completely, you can always go in and cut it and trim it then. So this is just a step I chose to do now, but it's also something you can do later on should you wish to. I'm going in once again and just sort of straightening out the fluted edge of my vessel, making sure that none of it is tucked underneath the vase. And I'm just going to smooth it out and just see how it's falling. This is when I add my second piece of string, which is going to really help emphasize that fluted edge. I'm going to take one final moment to just to make sure that everything is looking good. that it's all sort of fluted the way I like. And then I'm going to be setting it aside in the sun to dry completely. Also, at this point, if you feel that you have not added enough glue to your water and glue mix, then you can go and add some more tacky glue to the layers now and then set it aside to dry completely. So this is the concept that we're going for. This is just 2 layers. So now we're going to take this apart. This is the 3 layers. So I've already removed one of the strings, and to do that I'm just going to cut off the string over here. And then you could remove the cling film. I love that. I love the fluted edge. I do think that the 3 layers was better. I'm just wondering if I can maybe... I like that. So I'm going to add the other 2 layers in here too. I love that. It looks really, really beautiful. I've already cut all my bougainvillea off, and what I'm going to be experimenting with now is I think I'm going to cut these little stems off because I don't want to see it through here, and I'm thinking about possibly using hot glue to attach. So like I want to just sort of attach inside some folds, you know. Let's see. So I want to play around with ideas, kind of like that. And so I'm just going to play around a bit with it, but I'm going to let this fully dry because it's still got a little bit of, it's still a little bit damp underneath. But this is where I'm going in terms of with these bougainvillea. I want to just attach them to the rim of this and create a sort of beautiful sort of crown of these flowers. So that's kind of the end result. I mean, I've got nothing to really compare it to. This is just sort of out of my imagination. There's so many things you could do with this. It looks like an art piece just on its own. So I'm going to let that fully dry up, and then we're going to come back and see exactly how we're going to incorporate all of these. I've got 100 of them, so I'm thinking about sort of a real dense crown of them, but I just love how they look sort of tucked in here. So I love that idea with the string just sort of fluting these edges out. I think it gives a really lovely organic shaping to this thing, and I just love all this. I just love all the ruffles. It just looks really beautiful and organic. You could also spray paint this now if you wanted to. If you wanted a beautiful green or whatever colors you're working with, you could definitely spray paint this as well. So there's our structure. I'm going to be playing around with this some more and seeing how we can turn this into a really beautiful sculpture. So now for the really fun part, we get to experiment with putting the flowers into our vessel. But I wanted to just say before I start anything else that I had made one with 2 layers of this florist mesh, and I had in the video demonstrated with 3 layers, and then I put the 2 layers inside. So this is all in all, this is 5 layers of florist mesh. And then what I did after that was I took some of this, it's by Atlas, it's called Hard as Nails Matte Varnish, and I just coated the entire thing to give it a little bit more structure, and obviously to secure these two pieces together. As a blank canvas, there's so much you can do with it now. You could sort of weave some dried grass into it. You could even use cotton or thread to, sort of, I can imagine like a beautiful olivey green. You could sort of weave that in there. Yeah, you could do a variety of things with this, but this is just such a beautiful base. And all these sort of ruffled edges, which are now quite rigid, but they do have a little bit of movement to them, which is perfect. They are just the perfect spot to bury, hide, and sort of just veil some flowers. And we're using the bougainvillea for this one, but just to show you, I've got these were from the cherry blossoms. These were just spare ones that I had left over, and just to show you that really any flower could work, and just sort of nestled in to these ruffles could look absolutely breathtaking. I can imagine even some little origami butterflies going from small to large just on the base of this vessel. There's just a huge amount that you could do, and I think it's just such a lovely way to showcase your flowers in an interesting way instead of just creating a stem or a branch. So I'm just going to set those aside because we're going to be using the bougainvillea, as I said. And I am going to be using tacky glue to attach them, just because I wanted to have a very ethereal look, and I feel like I don't want to risk the hot glue leaving just blobs of hot glue along with all the hot glue strings that come with it. But I'm going to be using tacky glue, which just means that it's going to take a little bit longer for these to set, but it allows me to play around with placement. So before I sort of dispense glue into my plate here, I have divided my bougainvillea up into the sort of more browny tones, and then this more sort of pinky tones. And I'm going to just play around with arrangement, and I want to try and maybe get like a nice even flow around. I could sort of work in a more ombre kind of idea going around the rim, or just sort of alternate between this and these. And I have cut these stems quite short. You could cut them off altogether if you wanted to, but I'm just going to really now play around, and I'm just thinking about, adding them in like that, and then just maybe taking a different color and going in here. I don't mind these little bits of brown stem. I just didn't want them too long. And also when you look on the side, you will be able to see them, which isn't terrible. So that's what I'm going to just go for now. I'm just going to, I have played around with this design already, so I kind of know where I'm going, and I'm just going to go for it. So I'm just going to add my tacky glue here. And I've got all my bougainvillea pieces. These, as I said, were made in 2022, so they still look incredible. I actually love that the color has slightly faded more. It just, to me, looks a lot more realistic. So I'm just going to take this one out and maybe go for a smaller one to start off with. And I might just trim down that stem a little bit. And all I'm going to do is just place the stem into some glue. Just pick up some glue like that. And I'm just going to find a spot and just sort of place it in. This gives me time to remove it if I feel like I don't want it there and I want to just move it around. So, and it's also a good idea to look at it from the top. Just look down on it and see how it's looking. You can create it as sort of as sparse or as densely clustered as you like. In the class, 100 of these were made, so you've got a lot to play with. I'm just going to add some glue onto that stem, and maybe just so there's a ruffle here and a ruffle here. I may set this one deep into a ruffle over here, and then grab another one. It's a slightly bigger flower, and I might just place it further down into this ruffle over here. Take your time. This really is the most enjoyable part of it. Just gonna have a look. So I'm literally just gonna go around and place these in. You could also add a variety of flowers. You don't just have to stick to one kind of flower. You could add a variety of flowers to this vessel and it'll look gorgeous. And I really do love the layers because I think you could really create something very special just working with all these layers. So I'm gonna open it up a little bit and just see. Trying to get it through that netting. And I've played with a few ideas in terms of how I want this to look, which is why I'm kind of confident now just going for it. I've tried a few concepts, but I do like the alternating colors. If you have done your bougainvillea in sort of one kind of color, then it's not a problem at all. Then just place them wherever you want them to be. So open it up a little bit. Another thing I was sort of thinking about was trying to figure out how to, I mean this is quite a nice and stable vase. It has been on my desk for a while. It has got quite a nice bit of sort of weightiness to it. But if you wanted to, you could always just, if you want to use this to display flowers in, you could always stick a glass vase in to fill in with flowers and then sit it into this. I was also thinking about possibly just dipping this bottom edge into some resin. I've been wanting to experiment with resin for a while as well. So there's that option. I'm sure there are plenty other ways you could weight this down more if you wanted to. But this has got enough of a base that it's not just going to topple over, which is great. So let's just keep going here. So I'm just going to find some little folds here into which to place these. Have a look. I just love how it looks just nestled. I haven't even sort of cut these neatly. I like that they look very organic and just very natural. So it sort of lends itself very well. This whole design I just think is so enchanting. Let's just go with another pink one. I'm just looking at it and I can see that I want to fit something in over here. Actually, maybe I'll do a beige one. Open up that fold right there and just sit this inside. And it's also great having the variety of sizes of the bougainvillea, so you can really just play around with that. You can lay some of them sideways if you want to. They don't all have to be sort of facing upward. You can create sort of different looks by laying some to their side. Cut the stem down a bit. The glue is just going to hold everything together quite nicely. And obviously when it sets up, you're not even going to see the glue. So it'll look like they're just floating in these layers, which is so beautiful. I love this color, just so pretty. me see. Okay, so on the sides here now, I've still got some spaces which I think I'm going to try and set some into. I could also just set some into here if I wanted to. So let's just go in and see how that's going to look. So just place one into there. See, it looks so beautiful. Actually, let me cut that one down a bit. I'm going to pull some of these layers down and then just place some of these in there. I'm getting some glue onto the base of the bougainvillea and then just placing it in, just so that I know it is going to glue well. So right now I'm just sort of playing, I'm just seeing where I can fit in some flowers. And that piece coming out there, I'm just going to trim that off. It's not sticking out so much. And then glue, set it into that little fold. Let's just have a look. Might do a pink one in here. So this is just going by what I'm seeing and just sort of what my eye is telling me that this little space needs. As I said, it's just, this is now just very intuitive. There's no real formula for it. I'm loving how that looks. It's so, so pretty. Let's grab some more. This florist mesh, it really lends itself well to this design. I just love the sort of airiness of it. It looks very impressive. I think, you know, the sculptural piece, it's incredibly beautiful and detailed. Lots of little details to notice. Just have a look. She wants something set in there as well. That layer. So now I'm just sort of dragging the side of the flower into the glue so that as I seat it in here, it's going to sit nicely and just sort of tack up against this florist mesh. So I think that looks great. I'm happy with that. Maybe just something on top over here, a beige one, because if I add a pink, it'll be too much sort of pink in this section here. So I think a nice beige one will work. Right there. Just make sure that when you're putting your stems in, it's making contact with the mesh so that you know that it's going to glue in there well. I think I might want to add something just on the inside over there. And I think I'll do something pink. The glue hasn't fully tacked up yet, so if I want to change my mind about something, I still have time to do that, which is the beauty of using tacky glue. Let's see. So I have another one in here. I think that is good. So I like that. I'll set those aside. Okay, so let's just set this all aside for a moment and then just take a look at that. Got a little bit of glue on here, it's fine, it's going to dry and you won't even be able to see it. I absolutely love the way this looks. It's I was just thinking as well that what you could do is, even if you took some petals, you could set it between the layers of this floral mesh so you could actually see almost petals layered in between this, which could also look really, really beautiful. And as I said, you'd use a variety of flowers. You could throw some greenery into this if you wanted to. I love the idea of possibly using some sort of cotton, just like some threads just woven in somehow. I need to experiment with that a bit more. But the vessel has turned out so beautiful. I think the title of Veiled Flora Vessel suits us so well. I'm just going to press in all that tacky glue. It won't matter once it's dried, you won't see it. But I just think that looks really so beautiful. And it's just such a lovely sculptural piece. And I want to experiment with, what I want to do is try and experiment with a bit of resin. And I think just getting a little dish so the same width as the base and just setting it in so that just the base is resin, which could, I think, weight it down quite nicely and be also quite interesting. But as is, like I said, it's been on my desk for a few days to fully dry, and it has been very stable. The wind has been blowing and it hasn't blown over at all. So I know that it's quite nice and stable as is. And I just think with these bougainvillea, just the color is so gorgeous. With this being such a neutral color as well, you could, have more vibrant pops of color with your flowers. You could also just, as I said, spray paint this up and just create something really quite interesting and very unique. So there is our beautiful Veiled Flora Vessel. I'm thinking about just scattering some of those bougainvillea flowers just in the base as well. Could look quite pretty. But it's such an interesting thing, and it's great to experiment with displaying flowers in a different way. If I take some of these now and, you know, let's just see what they would look like together. I've cut down the stems obviously, but those could look really beautiful set in amongst the bougainvillea as well. So there's lots that you can do. And with this being such a neutral palette, any sort of colour flowers you add is going to just, I think, really just bring it to life. Just see. Let me know what you think. I think these little cherry blossoms could work quite beautifully actually in this arrangement, and add a nice little extra bit of texture. So have fun experimenting. And I also think that you could create any kind of, you could create this vase with anything. I think if you use taffeta, you could use organza, you could use tulle. I'm sure there's loads of things you could use as a base, just layering with glue, which will give it some sort of firmness and hold its shape. So there's lots of things. I'm even thinking sort of a very thin crepe paper could be used as well. You could lay a tissue paper. It could also be very, very interesting. So there's a lots of things you can do. And as I said, I've styled these bougainvillea. I've made them and styled them in a branch form and a wreath form, and now in this beautiful vessel. So it's just fun to find other ways to display your flowers.